The Chicago Bears are done asking the NFL for patience, and that is what makes this feel serious now. Nobody expected this turn to hit this fast. 1 year ago, people were still talking about potential. Now the tone is different. Caleb Williams just finished his first season with Ben Johnson by driving Chicago to an NFC North title, a playoff win, and a franchise passing record of 3,942 yards. That is not a team trying to look promising. That is a team starting to act like it knows exactly where it is going. And the scary part is, the Bears did not stop at the quarterback. Rome Odunze already looks like a real pillar in this passing game. And late last season, Luther Burden III and Colston Loveland started showing why this offense can hit defenses from different angles without warning. And then Chicago turned around and changed the feel of the defense too, bringing in Devin Bush and Kobe Bryant as part of a faster, more aggressive offseason push. What nobody is talking about enough is how all of these moves connect. This does not feel random. It feels like a team building one clear identity on purpose. But here is the twist. Chicago still does not look finished. The DJ Moore trade opened more room and handed the Bears another second-round pick, which means this roster can still change again before anyone even lines up for Week 1. That is why this story feels bigger than a normal offseason. The draft matters, the defense matters, the extra picks matter, but the center of all of it is still Caleb Williams. Because once a team truly believes it has found its quarterback, every other move starts carrying a lot more weight. The Chicago Bears are not building this offense around hope anymore. They are building it around shape. That is a huge difference. Last year, too much of the talk was about whether Caleb Williams could carry the weight. Now the question feels different, because Chicago finally looks like it knows what kind of offense it wants around him. It wants pace. It wants timing. It wants pressure from different spots at once. That is why this unit feels more dangerous now, not because of one loud name, but because the whole thing is starting to fit together in a way defenses cannot read early. And when you look at the pieces, the picture gets clearer fast. Colston Loveland already turned into a real part of this passing game, and he finished with 58 catches as a rookie. Luther Burden III added 47 catches even after a tough start to his first camp. Rome Odunze gives Chicago another outside threat who already showed he can produce, and the Bears quietly added Khalif Raymond, a veteran who already knows how Ben Johnson wants this thing to move. That is what makes this group interesting. These are not random parts. They each bring a different kind of stress, and together they make life easier on the quarterback without making the offense feel limited. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Once a team starts trusting its young pass catchers this much, it can make a move that looks risky from the outside and still believe it is getting stronger. That is exactly why the next step in this story matters so much, because the DJ Moore trade did not just change the receiver room, and it changed the entire draft board. The Chicago Bears made the kind of move that tells you this front office is not thinking week to week, it is thinking 2 and 3 steps ahead. Trading DJ Moore was never going to feel small, because you do not move a player like that unless you believe something bigger is opening up behind it. That is the shocking part. Chicago gave up a proven weapon, but in return, it gained a new second-round pick from Buffalo, and suddenly this draft stopped looking ordinary. It started looking like a chance to move the whole roster at once. Now the pressure shifts to Ryan Poles, because this move only works if the Bears truly trust what they already have around Caleb Williams, and if they know exactly where the next holes are. Chicago now holds picks 25, 57, 60, 89, and 129, which means this team can hit the board again and again before most teams even catch their breath. What nobody is talking about enough is how much freedom that creates. Chicago does not have to force one perfect answer. It can attack multiple problems and still stay in control. And that is why the trade feels bigger than one receiver leaving town. It changed the rhythm of the whole offseason. It gave the Bears room to think bigger on defense, sharper in the trenches, and smarter with the way they build around their quarterback. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because once Chicago opened that door, the next move started revealing the kind of team it really wants to become. The Chicago Bears started showing their real plan the moment Ryan Poles stopped chasing splash and started stacking fits. And that is where this gets interesting. He said the common theme of this free agency class was getting faster and more explosive, and once you hear that, the moves stop looking separate. Devin Bush arrives with range at linebacker. Kobe Bryant comes in for the secondary. Neville Gallimore gives the front more movement inside. This was not about winning headlines. It was about changing the speed of the team before the draft even starts. Then the picture gets even clearer when you see the support pieces. Cam Lewis and Kentavious Street were added right after that first wave, and Jack Sanborn came back to a defense that now feels more crowded and more flexible. On offense, Chicago did not ignore the quarterback either. Garrett Bradbury was brought in through trade, and Jedrick Wills Jr. was signed after that. Which tells you Poles was not just thinking about defense, he was also protecting the structure around Caleb Williams. These are not random names thrown at a roster. They feel like clues. And that is why this part matters so much. Free agency did not finish the Bears. It revealed the mold. Faster on defense, safer around the quarterback, deeper in more than one spot. But here's the twist. Once a front office shows its hand like that, the first draft pick starts carrying a lot more pressure. Because now everyone can see the shape of what Chicago wants to become, and pick 25 is where that vision either sharpens or gets tested. The Chicago Bears are heading toward pick 25 with a kind of pressure that can change the whole draft in one moment. Not because they are desperate, because they have options. And sometimes that is even more dangerous. Ryan Poles said this spot forces Chicago to cast a wider net because this is the first time in years they are not sitting in the top 10 and waiting for the board to come to them. After an 11-6 season and an NFC North title, this pick feels different. It is no longer about grabbing a savior. It is about showing the league what kind of team the Bears truly want to become. That is why the names around this pick are all over the place, and that is exactly what makes it so interesting. Some people see safety Emmanuel McNeil-Warren as the answer for the back end after Kevin Byard and Jaken Brisker left. Others think Ben Johnson could still want another weapon for Caleb Williams. And there are still voices pushing the pass rush and the offensive line. This pick is not just about talent. It is about identity. It is about whether Chicago wants to hit the defense first, protect the quarterback harder, or lean even more into the idea that this offense can become a real problem fast. But here's the twist. The first round may not even give Chicago its cleanest answer. If the board gets messy at 25, the real damage could come one day later because the Bears still hold picks 57 and 60. That is where the draft can turn from one big question into two fast solutions. And that is where this story starts getting even more serious. The Chicago Bears may get all the noise at pick 25, but the part that could change this roster the most might come right after that. Picks 57 and 60 give Chicago a rare chance to strike twice before the board settles down. And that is where this draft starts feeling dangerous. The Bears do not need one flashy answer here. They need force, speed, and players who can make life easier for Montez Sweat and the rest of this defense. That is why the second round feels so big, because two clean hits here could turn a good plan into a real identity. One path is clear, edge first. Danny Dennis Sutton keeps showing up around current Bears talk because Chicago still wants more heat off the edge. Not just one main threat offenses can slide toward every week. Another name that fits the same tension is Derek Moore, a power rusher who brings strength and pressure from different spots. And if Chicago wants to attack the middle too, Grayson Halton becomes interesting fast because he brings burst from inside, and that kind of player can change the whole feel of a front. Now, this is not just about adding bodies, it is about making the defense faster to the quarterback. But here is where it gets even better for Chicago. When you have two picks that close together, you do not have to solve everything in one swing. You can answer edge and interior. You can attack pressure from two places at once. And if that happens, the next question gets even more interesting. Because once the front starts taking shape, the linebacker room becomes the next spot that could force a tough decision. The Chicago Bears may have created their biggest quiet problem in the linebacker room, and that is exactly why this part of the offseason matters so much. Jack Sanborn is back. Devin Bush is in. DeMarco Jackson was brought back too. Suddenly, a position that looked thin does not feel thin at all. It feels crowded, tense, and full of decisions that can shape the rest of the roster. What nobody is saying loud enough is that this does not make TJ Edwards less important. It makes his spot one of the most watched on the whole team. And once you dig into it, the pressure gets real fast. DeMarco Jackson did more than survive last season. He started 4 games and finished with 34 tackles, a sack, an interception, and 9 special teams tackles. Then you add Devin Bush, who came in after a season with 125 tackles and 3 interceptions, and you can see what Chicago is chasing: more speed in the middle of the defense. But here is the twist. TJ Edwards is also coming back from a fractured fibula, while Noah Sewell is out indefinitely with a torn Achilles. So this room is deeper, but it still is not simple. That is why this linebacker story matters more than it first appears. It is not just about who starts. It is about how much freedom the Bears really have once the draft begins. If this room is steadier than people think, Chicago can attack other spots without panic. If not, the board changes again. And that is what makes the final picture so interesting, because the Bears are entering this draft with more than one path to finish the job. The Chicago Bears do not need this draft to save them, and that is exactly why they feel dangerous right now. Teams get desperate when they only have one path. Chicago does not. With picks at 25, 57, 60, 89, and 129, Ryan Poles can attack this roster in layers instead of forcing one dramatic move and praying it works. That changes everything. It means one bad break on the board does not kill the plan. It means one surprise slide can change the whole weekend. Most teams walk into April hoping the draft gives them answers. The Bears are walking in with enough control to choose which questions they want to solve first. That freedom exists because the foundation is already there. Caleb Williams is not carrying an empty roster anymore. Ben Johnson is not building from scratch. The offense already has shape, the defense already has new speed, and the front office already used free agency to protect key spots before the draft even starts. So now Chicago can think bigger. It can chase pressure on defense, more toughness in the trenches, or another smart fit that makes life easier for everyone around the quarterback. That is what smart teams do. They stop drafting out of fear and start drafting with a clear picture of who they want to be. And that is the real point of this whole story. The Bears are not waiting to discover their identity. They already found it. Now they are just sharpening it. That is why this offseason feels so different from the old Chicago cycles fans got tired of watching. This time, the quarterback is in place, the coach has direction, the picks are stacked, and the plan actually looks connected from one move to the next. The shocking part is, if the board falls even close to right, this team may leave draft weekend looking a lot closer to ready than the rest of the NFC wants to admit.